Shalom. This is a Orthodox Union Synagogue services in conjunction with NCSY session on Teen Minyan points and how to enhance your Teen Minyan, how to make it the best Teen Minyan in the country. Today's date is December 18th, 2013, and I recognize as I start this that most of the people that will ever watch this session will most probably be not watching it live. They'll be watching it in years to come. And so the situations that I'm describing are in today's time. And there are situations that we are dealing with teenagers today, not necessarily with teenagers when you might be watching this. So if some of these issues seem outdated or they seem not relevant to your congregation or your crowd, it might not be because of your congregation or crowd. It might be more because of time, and time has passed, and priorities and values change, and teenagers especially are fickle individuals, and their desires and the things that they are into might have changed as well. But I want you now, in any time, in any place, I want you to imagine what a teenager's life is like today, especially from their perspective on tefillah. Let's look at what a teenager, we're talking about Teen Minyan, and Teen Minyan, if nothing else, is all about davening. So think about prayer from a teenager's perspective today, and what does it look like? They're given a book, which 90% of them don't understand the words that are in this book. They are, most of the time that they are praying, it's a mandatory session of when they are in school. In school, they have on their schedule prayer, tefillah, davening, whatever it says, shachar, maybe mincha, maybe even possibly mariv, and they are told that they must be there for that time period, and they must be praying. If it's a boy, they must put on their tefillin. If it's a girl, they must sit and stand quietly. Or if they have a joint minyan, so then they have to follow what the boys are doing. And if they don't do what's expected of them, at best they are reprimanded. At worst, they are given a bad grade. And that's tefillah for them. What I've left out, of course, is the passion, is the interest, is the desire, is the happiness that should come from prayer. I had a Rebbe I went to Yeshiva Mivaseret named Rabbi Kaddish Waldman. And Rabbi Waldman once told me something that stuck in my head, something that I've yet to be able to accomplish myself, and definitely have been unable to give to my teenagers. But it gives a perspective on what tefillah should be. Every single time we pray, we should leave that prayer service a changed person. Because every single time we pray, whether it's in a minyan or by ourselves, or even just those quiet moments when we pray to God for something that we really want, that prayer should have changed us as a person. And that in a daily prayer that our teenagers are offering to God and are saying, that is wholly unmet. We are for sure not accomplishing that. If our teenagers are changed from prayer, they are changed in an adverse way, and they are walking out of prayer disinterested, totally turned off, and never wanting to step foot back into the prayer session again. And that's where we're failing. We're failing our teenagers. We're failing ourselves. So, without getting too negative, the Teen Minyan, the model of a Teen Minyan must be completely different if we want it to be successful. If we want the Teen Minyan to be successful in any way, shape, or form, however you judge success, whether you judge success by numbers, whether you judge success by interest, whether you judge success by participation or passion, however you judge it, we have got to be, meaning we, the ones that run Teen Minyan, we must be completely different than the daily experience that teenagers have in school. Because if we're merely repeating that experience, then we're going to fail. The overall point that needs to be made is that Teen Minyan must be a positive experience for teenagers and an atmosphere that allows them to grow as people. That has to be what your Teen Minyan is about. If your Teen Minyan is a social experience, that's great. If your Teen Minyan is a way of gaining points or whatever other incentives that you offer, or a way we offer a barbecue every once in a while for those that participate a lot. If it's lo lishma, that's fine, but it has to be a positive experience and an experience that allows them to grow. Otherwise, we're just failing, and we might as well close shop now because there's no purpose in having a Teen Minyan otherwise. That's the idea. Now, let's see here. Let's go on here. We have to avoid a negative experience with our teenagers. That's the number one priority that we must make sure that we are not guilty of is a negative experience. That means that we should be avoiding as much as possible rebuking our teenagers. Even though rebuke does come, sometimes it is necessary, but if we can offer an encouraging word instead of a negative word, that works much better. Excuse me. We have to. One benefit that we have that really helps us is that we don't have, unlike schools in Teen Minyanim in shuls, we don't have the pressures of a curriculum. We don't have any markers with which we measure our success for our boss. We usually have very little to no expectations from us other than sometimes filling the room, and we have zero oversight. Meaning that, I don't know if you share this experience, but it's rare that I'm called in for a performance review about my Teen Minyan. I've been in 2 shuls now, running 2 different Teen Minyanim. As a teenager, I was in the 3rd, and I can't recall ever anybody coming in to ask about anything other than how are the numbers. All right, that's it. So what that gives us is the freedom to be able to. It's the freedom to be able to do what we want without having to meet unrealistic expectations. So if we have an idea about how to inspire our teenagers in davening, then that's great. That we can run with that idea. And as long as it's not too ludicrous and won't get too many people upset, generally we have the freedom to be able to do that. And that's what's going to allow us to make davening a positive experience. That's what does it. If most schools need to have, if you're a tefillah teacher like I am in a school, there's certain expectations. I run in my community school. I run a traditional minyan, which is a regular minyan, but there's expectations. The expectations are I keep the kids in the room for 35 minutes. The expectations are that everyone is sitting quietly. The expectation is that everyone's sitting, that everyone has a seat. In my teen minyan on Shabbat, I'm currently the teen director or teen rabbi at the Boca Raton Synagogue. I don't have those expectations. Teen minyan can last 4 hours and it can last 45 minutes. There's no expectations of me. There's no expectations of how much or how little davening I'm covering. Again, if I decided to do a chetzi kedusha in the middle of Shacharis, I'm sure I'd get somebody would complain at some point. But for the most part, I have that freedom to do what I need to do in order to inspire my teenagers. Now, there are a couple of necessary factors for the success of a Teen Minyan. By the way, this will probably not last a full hour. If I don't have a crowd to work off with, I'm currently just staring at myself, not fully convinced that I'm only speaking to myself. So in those cases when that happens, I generally talk a lot faster because the only person I'm ensuring that understands what I'm saying is myself, and after I make each point, I pretty much understand it, so I go on quickly. If you do have a question, I'm sure there's got to be some way of sending it to me. For lack of a better way, here's a safe thing to do. I'm going to announce my cell phone over here, and here's the best part. I don't plan on changing this number anytime soon, so you can send me a text message now or in 5 years from now if you have a question. My cell phone number is 561-739-2150. 561-739-2150. And if you have a question on anything that I'm saying, so feel free to text me. Again, now or in 5 years from now. And I hope to be able to get back to you soon. If I'm busy with something, I apologize if I don't get back to you right away. But that's the idea. Okay. So there are a couple of necessary factors. The first one I call, and I think this is the Yarog Val Yavor rule when it comes to Teen Minyan. I've never encountered anyone that runs a Teen Minyan that has told me that they do the exact opposite and they find it more successful. If you are the person that does that and you are the one that finds this more, then please text me. I would love to hear. The first factor I call short and quick. Now, short and quick seem to be the exact same thing, but they're actually two very different things. Short has one benefit to it, and quick has a completely different benefit to it. The benefits are as follows. Short Teen Minyan means that it ends early, okay, and meaning not like let's start at 6 so we're done by 7, but short means that it does not take a long time. My Teen Minyan, I try my very best. I know this is going to sound crazy, but my goal, my dream, the best Shabbat I can ever have at one extreme is a 45-minute minyan. I know that sounds nuts, and it's rare. It's a rare Shabbat that we get to accomplish that. But the ideal for me is an hour. Sometimes it takes an hour and 15 minutes. If you aren't taking anywhere longer than that, an hour and 20 minutes, hour and 25, hour 30, and God forbid an hour and 45 minutes, that has to change. And teenagers are not going to appreciate being in a minyan that's taking as long as the one that their parents are in. Now, we'll talk about how we do that, but I want to focus on ends early and what the reason for that is. We can quote studies, and we've heard it right and left, that teenagers' attention spans are shortening from anywhere. I'm a teacher, so we're told that we have 7 seconds to grab their attention or else we've lost them. And every 6 to 7 minutes, I've got to change the modality of what I'm doing from full frontal teaching to an activity. And we know all the studies, and if you don't know the studies, then do some studies about how difficult it is to keep a teenager's attention. You can watch any episode of any television show, no matter what it is, and watch how quickly the scenes change from showing one person to showing a different person, as opposed to, let's say you're talking about a dialogue of watching two people just talking together and the camera never focuses on the two people talking back and forth. The camera will switch from one person to the other because that's what's keeping your attention. If you don't do things like that, if you don't keep switching, you lose the teenager's attention, you lose everybody's attention. So what has to happen is, now things must be quick. You cannot convince somebody to come sit for a couple of hours. Our Yom Kippur Teen Minyan, Shachars and Musaf combined, is finished in under 3 hours. And no, we don't skip crazy things. And Shabbos morning, we don't skip crazy things. But we do things short and quick because we need to get out of there. So we need to finish. You must make sure. I hold this as a Yagvei Yavor rule. You must make sure that you're out of there. This helps in 2 ways. Number one, it helps to make sure that the teens that are actually in the minyan have a positive experience. They don't sit there looking at their watches and saying, or at the clock or wherever, saying, "Wow, we've been here forever." It allows them to really move in a quick way, and it allows them to think to themselves, "Okay, I'm going to be out of here soon. This is not going to take forever." So there's a benefit to those that are in your minyan. The second benefit are to those that you're trying to recruit to the Teen Minyan. When you go to somebody and say, "Hey, what are you doing Shabbat morning? Why don't you come to my minyan?" So you're either talking to somebody who's davening in a different minyan and you want them to transfer over to your minyan, right? Or you're talking to somebody who's who's not going to davening and you want them to come. If you can add in a tagline as a marketing pitch, as a sales move, and say, "Hey, our minyan only lasts an hour and 15 minutes," the teenager will first look at you skeptically and then say, "Listen, just try it once, and you'll see that I'm right, that's how quick our minyan is." If you can do that, then you've been a success, and you've been able to recruit much better. So it's a great tagline that you could say, "We'll be done quickly." Okay, let's see here. The quick. Okay, so we've talked about short. Quick is just as important. And what quick is that minyan, I call this, I never ever say that our minyan is fast, our minyan is, I don't even say quick. What I like to use is the term, and we'll use it from now on, is efficient. What does that mean? Go into the average minyan. I've been to shuls across America, and you really, at certain times, you begin to lose patience at the time that's wasted. It's almost like a lahavdil, a baseball game, where you wonder why they're walking around, why they're stepping off the mound and stepping on the mound, and the batter stepping in the batter's box and out of the batter's box. And everyone that's sitting watching this says, can you just all get in sync and just get the game moving a little faster? And people get bored. And that's why, like, my children will not go to baseball games anymore because it takes forever. So what we want to do is we want to make this more efficient, which means less time wasted. So in a regular main minyan, what you'll see is you'll see the whole procession and pomp and circumstance of taking the Torah out. That could be in some shuls. That could be a half-an-hour procession. I was in a shul in Los Angeles, and that shul we had a parade around the entire shul that went literally. It was a jog. It was a whole parade. It went around the women's section, through the men's section, and it was all around. And it took forever. It added about 15 minutes to the service. That's 15 minutes where no one is doing anything productive. There's no parts of davening, and yes, of course, if you're super frum and you're super stark, you can open up a sefer during that time and get 15 minutes. By the way, small pitch, I wrote a book about that stuff called Eis Lasos Lashem, Maximizing Your Times, and one of the things I talk about is time wasting in davening. But our teenagers, for the most part, are not going to look at that and say, "Oh, valuable time to learn. Let me take out a sefer now and get some learning done." They're going to look at this and say, "This is taking forever. Why are we going around?" So there has to be things that you can cut out of davening that are not part of the davening service. It's not even traditional. It's just stuff that people do because they've been doing it forever. One of the prime examples are walking around the shul in a procession. When you take the Torah out of the Aron Kodesh, it should go to one place. It should go to the bima. Oh, we got our first text message. Someone is watching. That's impressive. Okay, so that's the. I'm opening it now, so I will answer the question. But that's the first idea. Okay. To keep it short and quick, are you abridging anything? I don't know who wrote this, but I appreciate the question. So no, you don't. We're going to talk about what you can cut out and what you cannot cut out of davening. But no, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, and maybe now it's becoming more clear, but I'm talking about taking out the extraneous stuff. A Misha Berach after each aliyah. A Misha Berach after each aliyah is there to raise money. Now, unless your teenagers are big donors to the shul, chances are they're not going to demand a Misha Berach. So there's no reason to have a Misha Berach in davening. Is that abridging davening? I think some 80-year-olds might say, hey, we need a Misha Berach. But I don't think that any teenager is going to go and after they get their aliyah and turn to the gabbai and say, where's my Misha Berach? Here's my list of my 45 family members that I want you to include in my Misha Berach. It's never happened and it never will happen. That's a great time to cut out parts of davening that are totally unnecessary. So no, you don't have to take things out. I personally, there are certain parts of davening I take out, but not big ones. I tell my teenagers to say brachos at home. Brachos is a part of davening, 100%. Yes, there's a debate among the Rishonim if brachos should be said at home or in shul, and we hold that it should be said in shul by the chazan. But think about it for a minute. How many teenagers show up on time that are going to sit there and say, "Whoa, you didn't say brachos"? No one knows. So I tell the chazan, say the brachos at home. Most of your teenagers are coming to davening and they're catching up and saying brachos when we're in the middle of Sukkot Zimra anyway. So if the chazan starts where I have my chazan start at Baruch Shemar, yes, I know we're cutting out korbanos, which are key in every teenager's life, but I can tell my teenagers, listen, if korbanos is an important part of davening, Berachos HaShachar is an essential part of davening. Those things must be said, but we're going to say them before minyan. If a teenager comes up to me and he walks in a half an hour late to minyan and he says, "Whoa, I heard a half an hour ago you didn't do brachos," well then I might have to rethink it. But in 12 years experience in doing this, that's never happened. So we're not talking about cutting out parts of davening. And I'll tell you, whether or not you can or can't cut out parts of davening, that's not necessary. What's necessary is cutting out the fat, cutting out the unnecessary parts of davening, and that is where you have an abridged davening. So I hope that answers your question, and I appreciate you texting, and I appreciate the fact that there is somebody watching. Okay, so that's the idea of an efficient tefillah. An efficient tefillah is taking the siddur. And by the way, we're gonna talk about gabayim in a minute, but you're gonna want to sit down with your gabayim and your key members of your minyan. Yeah, they're teenagers, but you want to sit down with them and get them on board with this and say, listen, we're not gonna rush tefillah. We're not rushing through davening. That's not the goal, because we want to have inspirational and passionate prayer. So we don't want to rush davening, but we want to make davening efficient, which means that we want to make sure, and let's go into this a little. We want to make sure that we are that when Revi is happening. So first of all 7 people getting aliyot know who's getting an aliyah next. So the 7 people know before the Kriyas Torah starts that they're going to come up, and you're going to ask them, listen, as Revi is ending off, the guy getting Chamishi should start stepping up and he should have his towels already. That will save 5 minutes off of minyan. Right there, making sure that you're not waiting for the person to come, making sure that the person is up at the bima when it's time to have the next aliyah, so that way the gabbai can turn to him. Making sure the Baal Musaf is ready to hit Yakum Purkan immediately when the guy doing the Haftorah finishes his last bracha. Those are things that keep the minyan flowing, keep everything going. And those are the things. And if you want, and you're watching this, you can send me a text message. Again, my number is 561-739-2150. 561, excuse me, that would be bad. 561-739-2150, and you can send me a text message, and I will email you a list of everything. I have a booklet that I wrote with Meira Albert even, and footnotes with Svarim quoted of how we make davening more efficient. And if for some reason you didn't catch this, you can contact the OU. I have a feeling for the rest of my life, the Orthodox Union will always know how to track me down, and they can find me and get in touch with me, and I will send you that booklet of the steps that I take in order to make my minyan quicker and shorter, but mostly more efficient. Okay. Let's talk about other things. Let's talk about the teens that are in your minyan. Now, this is going to sound a little controversial, and I want to make sure that I'm clear here that we're not talking about excluding anyone at any time. But we all know that there are teenagers that are leaders, socially more healthy than others, and that's a fact of life. And what kills a teen minyan is when you have people that are not as socially adjusted as others running the teen minyan or leading the teen minyan or seen, most importantly, as the face of the teen minyan. If your teen minyan isn't attracting people to come to it, it's not really doing what it's supposed to be doing, because if it's a good minyan, people will want to go. But a pitfall to that is when the face of the minyan isn't the face that attracts other people. And I'm not talking about looks at all. I'm talking about when a teenager looks at the minyan, you say, oh, well, who goes to your minyan? And you say, well, this guy goes to the minyan. Is that somebody that other teenagers are going to want to say, hey, I want to be with that guy? So, for instance, the classical, the student council president, right? That's somebody that other teenagers obviously appreciate. And they will look at that and say, okay, those are the type of kids you want to, what I call, create the nucleus of your teen minyan. The nucleus of your teen minyan must be healthy, well-adjusted people, so that way they are attracting other people, and for the most part you're going to avoid pitfalls like ego and other things that will ruin a minyan when, for instance, just like they're going to grow up and be adults that do this, that they go up and say that my need, I want to be chazan, I want to get the all 7 aliyahs every single Shabbos, so that type of a person kills the minyan. You want to make sure that they are involved, but not the nucleus. So what you need to do first and foremost is find out the teens in your community who are the leaders, who are the socially adjusted kids, and what you want to do is you want to be able to attract them to the minyan. That might mean inviting them to your house for a Shabbat meal at the beginning of the year. That might mean taking them out to eat, hanging out with them. And yes, you're going to have to go to your shul and say, listen, this is the way I'm going to attract them. Can you widen the budget that I can take them out to a restaurant? And you want to have them buy into your dream. I want to create a teen minyan that's going to be efficient. That's going to be a cool place to hang out. We're going to talk about Kiddush in a little while. And I want you to be the leaders. That is a key key essential ingredient to a good teen minyan. Now, what do you do about the people that are not as socially adjusted, that you don't want as the face of your minyan, but are they could be in your minyan every week, or they could be very helpful to your minyan. They could be laning every week. They could be amazing chazans, but they don't want to be the face. What you need to do is give them positions that are not as visible, so they're not the face of the minyan. That is that's a very good way of making sure everybody is happy, and you want to make sure you're telling them how essential to the minyan they are, because they will be. You need to give them essential positions. You could have them be the maybe not the gabayim, but maybe they could be the people that they could be a gabay sheni. Maybe they could be somebody that hands papers out. They could be somebody that makes sure that everybody that comes into the minyan has a sitter. They can make sure that the room is set up the right way, and give them a title and give them a position so that they feel that they are important people, and make them important people, so that that feeling is not an empty, false feeling, but a really but a real feeling. Okay, so that's what you're gonna want to make sure that you are that you're doing with the teens. So that's the thing. So you want to make sure that you are attracting the healthiest, and let's put it bluntly, the coolest kids to your teen minyan, so that way they will then bring other people in, and that way your teen minyan gets popular and also runs well. Now, a key part to teen minyan, it's very hard for us as teen directors or teen rabbis or whatever your title or non-title might be, is to let go. And what I mean by let go is let go of control. You've got to be able to say that I don't want to be in control of anything. I don't need to be in control. And this is all for you guys. You guys have both the control, meaning you get to make the decisions, but you also have the responsibility to ensure that the decisions are made properly and that the minyan is running efficiently. So I give my gabayim great latitude. My gabayim have always been and will always be the greatest people and the coolest guys and the people I want to hang out with, because those guys are going to be the guys that can get the job done, and they are tremendous leaders. Now, if you're watching this and you weren't chosen as a gabbai, it doesn't mean that you weren't the coolest guy. It doesn't mean that you weren't the greatest guy. It means that somebody else there had, for whatever reason, was chosen. But there's no way you can ever speak publicly without offending somebody. But that's the I mean that. But my gabayim have always been people that know and understand my vision and have been able to see it. But then not only that, but they've also been able to not only buy in, but take the vision on their own and have the great responsibility of carrying it out and knowing that, hey, I'm responsible for this. This is now my show. In my teen minyan, I sit back. I do very little during the minyan itself. I sit there and I watch it, but if something's going wrong, I don't stop the minyan and announce, hey, something's going wrong. I turn to my gabayim and I say, hey, guys, check that out over there. That's got to stop. So that's again, if it gets talking too loud, maybe that I do have to shush and I have to hold up the minyan, because teenagers aren't going to necessarily rebuke somebody. But the key is that my father always taught me the lesson that a good manager is best seen when not there. And that's when you really tell if what you've taught the people that you're mentoring really know what they're doing, is if when you're not there, when you're not taking charge, are they able to carry things out the way it's supposed to be done? And that's the great responsibility you want to give to your teen minyan. So you don't want to be in control. At the teen minyan, you should be one of the least visible people in the room. The teens should be running everything, and not just as a facade, but they should really be running everything. Okay. So that's how you want to get them. That's who you pick as your gabayim. You always want to make sure to have two gabayim, just in case one can't make it. And these are gabayim that are leaders that can get other people to do things. You want them to be able to call up other kids and say, hey, I need you to lane, I need you to come, and you want them to recruit. And that's who you want. You also want them to have the necessary skills to be able to fill in if no one else is going to. You want them to be able to be chazanim, and you want them to be able to be balei kriya. Okay. What do you do with a kid, though, that wants to participate, that doesn't have the necessary skills? So there's got to be a way. You have to be able to figure out a way to include everybody, whether that means let them give a speech afterwards or anything. I've had a teenager in the past who had trouble reading Hebrew but so wanted to be the chazan. So what do? If we put him up at the pulpit and let him be a chazan, so then what's going to happen? Well, minyan's going to take 4 hours. So we came to a very good solution. He starts Psuket Zimra as the chazan, and he's getting better. He gets better and better and better at this. He starts 45 minutes earlier. 45 minutes before Teen Minyan, he shows up. He wants it really bad, and if somebody's coming to you complaining, they better want it, because if you offer them a solution, they turn it down. It means they didn't really want it. So I offered him, come 45 minutes early, start Psuket Zimra. Now we're at the same pace, right? It doesn't make a difference. People that come late, they don't care if they walk in. Psuket Zimra, you don't need a chazan anyway. So they come in, and this kid is an all-star, and he's doing amazing. So I was able to find a way to include him. Okay. Another thing is what you want to have is when it comes to recruiting, this is what I call the boomerang of recruiting. Boomerang recruiting is that you want your Teen Minyan to be a great place to recruit teens to other events, and you want the Teen Minyan to be a way to recruit teens to the Teen Minyan. In other words, you want to be able to turn to kids at Teen Minyan and say, hey, do you know I'm running this other event? And you want to be able to turn to kids at events or kids that you run into the street and say, hey, my Teen Minyan is so good, you're going to want to come to this. What's going on there? It's davening. Why would I ever want to come to davening? I hate davening, going back to what we were talking about in the beginning. Yes, but this davening you'll love. It's short, it's efficient. And here you go, it has a kiddush. Essential. Now, some shuls have a lot of money, some shuls have no money. Any way you have it, you got to have a kiddush. You can have a lavish, luxurious kiddush, or you can have a very small, modest kiddush. Kiddush doesn't have to be a cutting board and corned beef and pastrami and an all-star cholent. Kiddush can be very, very modest and still be an attraction. Right? That's it. All these kids are going to eat, so it's not like they're starving, and teenagers are starving actually all the time. But you want to be able to offer them that kiddush and be able to say, hey, I have a kiddush. If you can offer something special at the kiddush that they don't always get, we've got, where I am now, I have Chinese food. At my last show in Los Angeles, I'll throw in a plug for it, PKD, Pico Kosher Deli on Pico Boulevard in Los Angeles. And that was an amazing thing because you couldn't get that all the time. Teenagers were not going out for Pico Kosher Deli. They couldn't get it on Shabbat. They couldn't go out if they wanted it. So that was the only place you can get it. Shabbat morning, you can't get Chinese food. No one's mom is making Chinese food for Shabbos lunch. So if you want Chinese food on Shabbat, this is the only place you're going to get it. So things like that are cheap, right, that you want to find. And if you can't find a cheap thing, so that, like, a cheap restaurant that'll make you a deal or something, so then what you want to do is you want to go to get snacks, potato chips, pretzels, whatever it is, but something that they can look forward to. If you can find something unique, then that's even better. But you want to be able to say, and sometimes you're gonna have to get sponsors for that kiddush. Sometimes it's not going to be in your budget. You're not going to be able to cover it. Currently, where I am now, kiddush is not part of my budget. I could try to make it part of my budget, but that's going to cut out programming, and I'd rather not do that. So I go to parents and I ask them, and it's not a cheap endeavor to put on kiddush every week. But the key that I tell my teenagers is, without a sponsorship, there's not going to be a kiddush. That makes sure that we have kiddush. Okay. Okay. So. Now, I just got another text from somebody, but it's for a request for the booklet. Okay, thanks for the kind words. Okay, so now let's see here, the next thing. Okay, handouts. Here's a key thing. At some point in your Teen Minyan, you are going to find your teenagers are going to get bored. If on days where my Teen Minyan goes 45 minutes and I've hit the dream, my teenagers will get bored. Of course they're going to get bored. It's davening, right? And as much as that sounds like fear, and I'm the greatest heretic for saying that, davening was not instituted for teenagers with the American teenager in mind, or the Israeli teenager in mind, or the English teenager in mind, whoever happens to be watching this. But what Teen Minyan does get boring. So what I like to do is a handout. I like to give handouts with lots of information. Now, that sounds like a lot of work. It is a lot of work your first year. After that, it's very easy because you just keep printing the same one year after year, right? One thing that no teenager has ever come to me and said is, hey, this is the same handout you gave out last year. I've been giving out the same handout in Los Angeles. I gave out the same handout for 7 straight years, year after year. No one came to me and said, that's the same handout. I'm in Boca now. It's been 3 years. No one's ever come to me and said, Rabbi, I think this was last year. I think I learned this once before, right? Nothing. If you want an example of my handout, you can email me or text me, and I will send it to you. I will even offer to give you the year's worth of handouts, and you can change it and put your shul's name on it and do whatever you want. Take it from me. It's fine. Again, my cell phone number, 561-739-2150. And as long as Google is still working, that's on the Google Drive. It'll be easy to share it. Okay. Let's see here. The next thing is... let's see here. And by the way, as I'm talking to you, I just got an email from one of my moms, and it's and she just offered to sponsor Kiddush. Score. Okay. Let's see here. Okay. Not obviously one of my mom. I only have one mom, and I love her if she's watching this. But but one of the mothers of my teenagers in my Teen Minyan. Okay. Let's see here. Another pitfall. Adults. Okay. Adults can be a real drag on a Teen Minyan. I have trouble saying no to people unless I don't like them. So it's very hard for me to tell people that are in Teen Minyan, I'm sorry you can't come. But one advantage that Teen Minyan has for adults, besides the fact that it's short, quick, and efficient, is the late start, the early finish. You seem to get the best of all worlds. What adults sometimes don't recognize is the fact that it's a Teen Minyan, which means they shouldn't be there because they're not teenagers. My rule that I have in Boca is that I allow parents of teenagers to daven with their children. Sometimes I have the occasional father actually show up without their teenager. Sometimes I have adults that just show up. And they seem to not get the point that they shouldn't be in the room. I find it hard, and I don't think it's your job. I have to say this is my opinion, and maybe your rabbi and your board might disagree, but I don't think it's your job to ask them to leave. Excuse me. I think that's their job. I think the board or the rabbi has to make it clear that Teen Minyan is called Teen Minyan because it's for teenagers. Now, let's say your shul's not ready to go there. They don't want to throw people out. Or let's be honest. Let's say sometimes you need them for a minyan. So then my rule is they don't get to participate. Forget about being chazan, that's for sure. They don't get any aliyos. They don't lane. Even if I'm stuck without a bal koreh, I'll fake the thing the entire time, as opposed to having them participate. Adults do not get to participate in Teen Minyan because it's a Teen Minyan. And the minute that teenagers realize that this is no longer a Teen Minyan, but it's really just a late minyan where they're encouraging us to go, but we're not really in control, and it's not really our minyan, so then they'll stop coming, and no longer becomes their minyan. A great way, if you're having trouble with some adults, you don't want to have the confrontation, what I like to do is continuously ask adults to sponsor the Kiddush. Works perfectly. Nothing makes it more uncomfortable for somebody to be in a place where they're not supposed to be than constantly asking them for money. And when I say constantly, I don't mean each week. I mean a couple of times during minyan. I'll go over to them and I'll say, let's say during Shacharis, I will say, hey, do you think you could sponsor Kiddush next Shabbos? And if they say, oh, sorry, I have to walk away, and then I'll come back to them again during minyan and say, yeah, I remember I didn't get an answer from you. Do you think you could sponsor Kiddush? And if they say, well, a little hesitation, most people aren't want to say no outright, so then you come back to them again. Eventually, the experience of being constantly asked for money is so negative, it far outweighs having to either get up for an earlier minyan or show up an hour and a half late for an earlier minyan and getting out of shul late. They'll even sit through the rabbi's speech as long as they're not being constantly asked for money. That's a great, polite way of telling somebody they're no longer wanted here, is by just asking them over and over to sponsor Kiddush. That's great. And even, by the way, if you don't have a Kiddush, it's a great way to start, because let's say the person says yes, well, now you have a Kiddush. It's great. And if they come back the next week and they're all proud because they sponsor Kiddush, said, hey, this was great. Could you do this again next week? And there you go. Now you have a way of getting them out. Okay, that's essentially my whole shtick here that I have on Teen Minyan. There's a lot of other points, and I'm sure that are important and questions you might have, but that's in essence that's what I've got. Yes. So that's I have one question here. Can you discuss how to keep the minyan quiet? What's the most effective way to quiet a kid? Of course, now it gets cut off. Hold on. What's the most effective way to quiet a kid? I'm going to stop there. Okay, so here's quiet a kid who keeps on talking. So let's be honest here, okay? Kids talk, right? And Teen Minyan is never going to be the minyan that goes on in yeshiva. But that doesn't mean it has to be unruly. I think yesh lahavdil. I think you can make a difference between an unruly kid and a kid that, even if it's not unruly, a kid that's talking and chatting with their friends here and there, and a kid that's just completely disturbing the entire minyan. A kid that's and also I think it greatly depends on where in davening you're talking about. If people are talking during Hagbah, okay, so that happens. If in terms of if people are talking during Pesukei Zimra or Kriya Shema or Shemona Esrei, that's completely unacceptable. That's going to ruin the minyan, because at a certain point people realize they're not part of a minyan just as much as they weren't part of everything else. So I think I don't. There's the nuclear option, which is embarrassing the person. Hey, you stop talking. Not so good. Sometimes you want to kid around with the person and say, hey, I like the trick of, hey, see that black book? It works better when it's open, or things like that. Sarcastic comments. That's my nature. But I think that the most effective way of making sure, the most effective way of making sure a kid stops talking, sit down and talk to them after minyan. Don't let things progress, right? So say, hey, can I talk to you for 5 minutes after minyan? Right? Nothing bad. Just don't want to talk to you. And then just have a heart-to-heart with them. Say, listen, I like you, you like me. Oh, we have to talk about that. I like you, you like me, and we have the same goals here to make it a great minyan. I think it's best if you're not talking. Your davening will be better. You'll enjoy the experience more. What can we do to make sure you don't talk? And if the kid's going to say, oh, yeah, you're right, I'm not going to talk anymore, you're 100% right. So then I think that the kid's just saying that. So say, okay, well, let's talk about active steps that we can take together to make sure that your tefillah is going to be enhanced, and also in a way that doesn't disturb those around you and keeps the mode of decorum that we have in the minyan strong. So I think that the way you could do that is, well, maybe let's move our seat. Maybe you want to sit next to me. Maybe you want to sit, stay away from your friends. Now, that's not necessarily going to happen the next week, but it gets the kid aware. And then all it takes is, as if he starts talking the next week or she starts talking the next week, is a little look at them and, hey, we talked about this, you and me, right? And we're in this together. So that type of a thing, as long as you're genuine, right? A lot of times, let's be honest, teens that talk annoy us, and we really want to stop them and yell at them and scream at them. And we have to remember our goal here is to inspire and create a passionate tefillah experience for our teens. That means that we can't necessarily yell at them and get frustrated at them. We got to take a step back and ask ourselves, what's the most effective way? If the whole minyan is getting crazy, so then you got to go up to the chazan. You got to say stop, and this works very well. Listen, I want to end quickly. You all want to end quickly. I can't let davening go on like this. It's disrespectful to prayer. It's disrespectful to davening. It's disrespectful to what we're all here for. What you want to avoid is the negative school experience. You want to bring them into your goal. You want to say, hey, we're all here for the same reason. We all want the same goals. We want a great minyan. A great minyan can't work well if there's going to be talking. We have, at any point in davening, you should be able to say we have under 30 minutes left to davening. That's a great line. Right? If it's the start of Musaf is where people start getting a little antsy, so say, hey, let's, we've got like 7 minutes on the clock left. Let's make this a really great 7 minutes. I don't want to have to stop davening again. That, right? And as long as if you're not doing that enough, but best way possible, single out individuals, not publicly, single out individuals and bring them aside and talk to them on a one-on-one basis. Yes, it's more time. Yes, it's confrontational. But at the end of the day, it'll be the best way you could do this, and it'll be the most effective way you could do this. Okay, and that leads me, I hope that answers your question. That, if not, just text me and I'll elaborate a little more if you have anything more. But that leads me to one thing that I can't believe I forgot, which is, it's right here in my notes, which is a personal connection. You need to have a personal connection with your teenagers. That's essential. You want them to have a relationship with you, and then they'll come to the minyan, then they'll take part of the minyan. That's very, very important. So that's the that's an essential part of it, and that way they'll get more and more involved with the minyan. They'll bring their friends to the minyan, and that's the key. So I think that's all I've got. We went a good 45 minutes. Once again, let me end off with this message in case you tuned in late or whatnot. This, I assume most people will be watching this in the future as opposed to right now. I imagine that the average person watching this, if it ever happens, the average person watching this will be tuning in 3-4 years from now, and I don't know if then I'll still be involved with teenagers or I won't be. I hope I will be. I just love working with teenagers. So if you want to get in touch with me and you have any questions, you can text me at 561-739-2150. And if it's really so far along that number no longer works for me, it's web-based, so I imagine it will, but just in case it doesn't, so then what you can do is you can call the OU. They'll know where I am at all points for the rest of my life, and you can find out from them how to get in touch with me. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to help you. So I'm going to push the stop button now, and I think that should end our session. Thanks very much, and let's remember, it's all about the teenagers and making their lives better and their davening better. Shalom.